President Trump's new tariffs are now in force as of this morning, and China has just slapped the U.S. with higher duties still.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Bank of America. Bank of America is committed to helping businesses of all sizes make every move matter. Learn more at bankofamerica.com/banking for business. And by Commvault. When companies face ransomware and outages, they can recover data and business in just minutes with Commvault.
I'm David Brancaccio in Los Angeles. China has just responded again to President Trump's higher tariffs still by raising China's tariffs on U.S. exports again, this time by another 84% effective tomorrow. China's foreign ministry has said negotiations are possible, but only if the U.S. approaches China as equals and with respect. Marketplace's China correspondent Jennifer Pak is in Shanghai.
China says the U.S. tariffs are a bullying tactic. Previously, Chinese leaders retaliated on certain American exports that hurt President Trump's electoral base, like agricultural goods. But now Chinese officials are countering U.S. tariffs. Here's the tally so far. If you add all previous rounds of U.S. tariffs on Chinese exports under Trump's second term, they total over 100%, versus 84% on all American exports to China. And these figures are on top of existing levies. In Shanghai, I'm Jennifer Pak for Marketplace.
You might think bonds would rise when the stock market is down, but recession fears have caused bond prices to move sharply down today. The government's 10-year yield is up sharply, 4.45%. And there are other dynamics at work beyond the worry that tariffs cause an economic downturn. My colleague Nancy Marshall-Genzer has been bond-focused today.
There are a number of theories here. One is that investors like hedge funds had to sell bonds because they'd borrowed money to buy stocks. As you know, stocks have plummeted. So now those investors are caught short and are selling bonds to raise cash. Another theory is there will be less global trade in dollars because of the tariffs. Citibank analysts told Reuters those dollars tend to find their way into U.S. treasuries. So with fewer dollars around, there'll be less demand for U.S. bonds.
The CEO of the biggest bank, Jamie Dimon at J.P. Morgan Chase, told Fox Business this morning a recession is, quote, likely an outcome of the tariff war. Stocks are also still a mess. S&P futures down 1.6%, Dow futures down 730 points, 1.9%. NASDAQ futures down 1.3%. The dollar is down more than 1%, with the euro costing $1.11, but China's currency, the yuan, hit a record low. Close allies like the EU, 20% tariff, Japan, 24%. Several European car makers poured cars into the U.S. before the tariffs hit. Our afternoon evening program reported on how Land Rover and Audi now plan to pause new shipments to the U.S. to let that low tariff inventory get sold.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Affinity, provider of the CRM for the private capital relationship economy. Affinity knows who has the best relationship with the right startup. Affinity.co/marketplace. And by Sold a Story, investigating how the education system got reading wrong and takes you places getting it right. Sold a Story, available in podcast apps.
These remain deeply divided times, and the workplace is no escape. Today in our series, Office Politics, looking at ways to cope with polarization at work, let's turn to Colin Woodard, an historian and director of the Nationhood Lab at the Pell Center for International Relations and Public Policy at Salve Regina University in Rhode Island. His lab has done surveys that identify some widely shared principles Americans generally agree on. Mr. Woodard, welcome.
Thank you very much.
What were you and your team hunting for?
Well, we were hunting for what is it that Americans might still have in common. Why should the red states and blue states stay together? Is there something that we still share as Americans, that's our common umbrella? And that came very quickly to the question of, well, what's America for? What's our purpose? Where did the country come from? Where is it going? Who belongs? All these questions that scholars would say is the national narrative of a country, something every country needs. And our country has had a very contested one. And we wanted to work out if there's still a shared narrative or a latent shared narrative out there that can be a common story that can hold us all together.
So you asked people, you tested ideas with people. How did you come up with what we're about to hear?
Well, I'd done work as a historian on the national story. Like ours had been contested from the beginning, right? We had a bunch of colonies that didn't see eye to eye, that fought in the 1770s against consolidation of British power and found themselves in something called the United States together. It was kind of by accident, but nobody knew what that was. And so there had been this struggle from the very beginning to define what's the United States, what's a United Statesian supposed to be. And that quickly became a battle between defining our country in terms of devotion to a set of ideals, or one that, no, this is the ethno-state or ethno-states of a particular people. And that battle between an ethno-national and inherently authoritarian vision and a liberal democratic one, small l, small d, has been at the core of our story. And is that civic national story that we're devoted to a set of ideals in the Declaration, what does that look like? Do people still believe that now? And how would you talk about that now? So we did exactly what you suggest. We went out and did polling. And what we discovered almost immediately is the answer is yes. Large majorities of Americans across race and gender and political party and region and education levels do in fact prefer and believe in that narrative tied to the ideals in the Declaration.
All right, so hit me with something that will bridge the I'm talking to a Fox News fan or an MSNBC fan gap.
Our purpose as a country is to realize those sets of rights in the Declaration, that each person was given to them by the universe or God or nature's God, the right to survive, to live safe in your own person, free from domination, to live the life you choose for yourself, and to take part in determining who represents us and holding them accountable. And that we as Americans are in like an agreement, a covenant even, to defend one another's rights to these things. That's it. That's the American promise, like this pledge to uphold these inalienable shared rights. And the American experiment is the effort to try to actually build a nation or a society where that's possible.
One of Colin Woodard's books is American Nations, a history of the 11 rival regional cultures of North America. But he's also director of the Nationhood Lab at the Pell Center for International Relations and Public Policy at Salve Regina University. Thank you so much.
Thank you, David.
All of our political polarization at work pieces are streamable now from marketplace.org. Put Office Politics into the search bar. In Los Angeles, I'm David Brancaccio, and we're from APM, American Public Media.